Welcome to our webinar. I'm Marshall Shannon with Ministry Design Training. I'm a pre-construction navigator. We teach in our overview of construction that a church really needs to make certain that it is healthy and fit so they are ready to build. In this video, we're going to go through and talk about what that means and apply it both to the spiritual health of your congregation and the structured health of your congregation to determine whether or not you are ready to move ahead with your project. And pastors always want to know, when I say there is a difference between your church being healthy and fit, exactly what we mean. In order to go down through this, I want to share with you some resources that are available. These are available on our Ministry Design Concepts website, and also I'm going to put them in the resource section below the video screen so that you can click on them and they'll take you to the Amazon website to purchase the books. And so I'm just going to go down through this and kind of fill in a comment or two as we look at these different resources to help you determine whether or not your church is spiritually healthy. The first is 9 Marks by Mark Dever. This book has now at least 2 editions, but in it he talks about one of the marks being expository preaching, biblical theology, the gospel. When he deals with the gospel, he is trying to make certain that your church is not marginalized the gospel or not fully and correctly preaching it. So accuracy is what he is after there. Fourthly is a biblical understanding of conversion. How do people come to faith in Christ? And what does that mean? What does that look like? A biblical understanding of evangelism. How does God want us to propagate the gospel to reach the unchurched? A biblical understanding of membership, church discipline, and they ought to have a concern for discipleship and growth, and then a biblical church leadership model. These are the 9 marks that Mark Devers has set up and written about, and he explains them fully in his book, 9 Marks of a Healthy Church. And so this is one resource that you can go to and refer to and study to begin putting together whether or not you think your church is spiritually healthy and ready to build. Another one is Healthy Systems, Healthy Church by Nelson Searcy. Nelson has written a book giving 9 systems that need to be in place and ready to go, and here they are. The weekend service system, the evangelism system, the assimilation system, the small group system, the ministry system, the stewardship system, the leadership system, and the strategic system, along with the relationship system. All of these, he is talking about the structured processes, programs that you have on an ongoing basis in your ministry that they need to be healthy. And so if you have a healthy system, then the conclusion is that you're going to have a healthy church. You might add these to what Mark Dever has said. So you're looking at both the spiritual structure of your church and the structure of your church itself. Then the emotional healthy church. This is a book by Peter, and it's written with Warren Bird, and it deals with the strategy that they believe actually changes lives. And so where they are focused is on 7 principles of an emotionally healthy church. So here are the 7 principles. He tells you to look below the surface. Look below the surface. Break the power of the past. Live in brokenness and vulnerability. Receive the gift of limits. Embrace grieving and loss. Make incarnation your model for loving well. And slow down to lead with integrity. His focus here is on the emotions of a church and their emotional intelligence. Now, another resource for you is an older one that was written and published in 1995, Natural Church Development by Christian A. Schwartz. He gives 8 signs of a healthy church, 8 things, attributes, characteristics, and here they are. Leadership that is empowered, ministry that is set up by spiritual gifts and natural gifts, a passionate spirituality, functional structures, in other words, structures that work as you want them to, inspiring worship services, holistic small groups, holistic dealing more than just with their spiritual, but with their mental, emotional health, and looking at the whole person. Need-oriented evangelism and loving relationships. All of these folks have written these books approaching the idea of helping pastors determine if their church is spiritually and structurally healthy. Then the book written, Healthy Church DNA, Transforming the Church for Effective Ministry. This was written by 2 guys, Glenn and Larry, and they give 15 areas that you ought to examine to determine if your church is healthy. Uplifting worship, leadership, team leadership, lay leadership, a caring community, life cycle spiritual development, responsive evangelism, clear and open communication, healthy transitions, whole person stewardship, community servant ministries, stimulating shared vision and mission, effective and transparent organization, appropriate programs and ministries, accessible and functional facilities. They give these to us, and they expound on each one in their book. And as I said, at the bottom of your screen below the fold, you'll find a set of resources, and these will be links to these books so that you can go read the reviews about them and purchase them and use 1 or 2 of them to help you set up your screening process or your structure for determining if your church is healthy and fit, both spiritually and structure, and to figure out where you're weak, how are you going to get it healthy spiritually and in its structure. Then the book by Tony Morgan is Take the Lid Off Your Church. He provides 6 steps to building healthy senior leadership teams. Here's the first one. The most important decision your church will make. He gives you that answer in the book. 7 roles that cannot be delegated. 7 questions to identify who should be on the team. 7 strategies to empower leaders. What to stop and start at the top. Your next step, take the team health assessment. So on his website and on the book, they have a health assessment. These are the 6 chapters that he goes through to help you take the lid so your church can grow, develop, and expand. He gives these 6 categories. The next resource I would share with you that is dealing with church health, spiritually and in structure, is to position your church. And this pastor, T.L. Bates, he gives a strategy for developing a healthy and growing ministry, and he has 3 concerns. The first is to understand and define what you mean by church health, something we all need to do as leaders. Secondly is to position your church within 7 critical environments. And third is to connect the ministry dots. So he gives a process, a pathway, a step-by-step to positioning your church through strategy so that you can be healthy and grow. Now, you've heard me say in the other videos that a church, there is a difference between being healthy and fit. And so at the front end of your project, in which we have divided church construction into 5 phases. You want to make certain that during the preparation phase, this may be before you ever developed your building committee or certainly hired the industry professionals and determined exactly what you're going to build, that you've gone and really probed and investigated and given your church a spiritual and structured checkup to see if you're both healthy and fit. And as I've said, there's a difference. So let's talk about being healthy and fit. First, you look at your budget. When I talk about this, and I wrote a blog post that I'll give a link to you in the resource section where you can read further about this. When you look at your budget, when and how much and on whom are you investing your money? I say this because 97 cents out of every dollar in the churches in North America are targeted for the church membership, not for the unchurched, but for the churched in their church, for the membership of the church, for their regular attenders. 95% of the programs are for the church membership. So when you look at your budget and you want to determine whether or not you're healthy, here is one way to do it. Look at how you spend your money. Another one along with your money is to look at the ministries in your church. Who are they focused on? Who are they designed to serve? Your church family or your church family and your community? And as you look at the percentages, is 95% of your ministries set up that way? Then look, another one is at your manpower. Is your personnel in your church, what are their main job responsibilities? Are their titles and job descriptions all about caring for who's already in the church, or do you also have those who are out there to reach out to the unchurched and the de-churched? And so as you look at your budget, look at your money, your manpower, and your ministries. Then you might want to look at your visitors. How many do you have annually, and how many of them do you keep? So if you have 100 new people come into your church to visit in a year or in a quarter, how many of them do you end up keeping, assimilating in? Then your regular devotions. Here's one way to look at the spiritual health of your families. How many people have daily personal devotional times where they're reading their Bible and spending time developing their prayer life, their communication with God? And how many of your families in your church, whether it's a family of 1 or a family of 10, are having family devotional times? And so as you go through that, that's just another mark, if you wish, that I would give to you to look at their spiritual health, is they want regular private time alone with the Lord. Just like if you're listening to this and you want regular private time with your spouse or with your children. Another one is your community investment. How much money and manpower do you invest in your community through service, where you're investing in encouraging your people to invest in the people that live next door to them or across town? Then prayer, both privately and corporate. How much time and energy does your church family invest in private and corporate prayer? Small groups. Whether it's small groups, how many groups do you have? How many people are faithfully involved? What percentage of your church is faithfully involved? And the same could be said for small groups done by Sunday school or adult Bible studies. However you're structured and designed as church, how effective are you at getting your people into those real discipleship modules, groups where they can grow? Decisions made. How many salvation decisions were made annually, or dedication decisions made by believers? Disciples made. How many were made annually? How does this number compare to the previous years? How many disciples do you have that are regularly involved in making more disciples? Now, we had a book written by Warren Bird and another gentleman involved with it. I don't remember. The book name of the book is The Other 80%, and in it they deal with the fact that 20% of the people attending churches do 80% of the work. That means 80% are just sitting. They're fans, they're spectators. They are not involved in the ministry. I wonder what percentage of churches in North America have people in their church who are growing as disciples and are busy about making disciples that will in turn make more disciples. And so we talk about, making disciples. How many are being made? And the last category here in my blog post that I wrote was worship attenders. Is your attendance increasing year to year, or are you plateaued or shrinking, declining? What is, you have to determine what is healthy growth. And I put together a chart that is provided for us by Charles Arnn and Gary McIntosh in a book they wrote, What Every Pastor Should Know, 101 Indispensable Rules of Thumb for Leading Your Church. And here's what they say. Poor growth for a church is less than 2%. Fair growth is 3 to 5%. Good growth is 6 to 8% growth per year. Excellent growth is 9 to 11% per year. Outstanding growth is 12 to 15. And incredible growth is 16 to 20% growth per year. Now, when you stop and look at the health of your church and the fitness of your church, let me just give this analogy to you. I went to the doctor recently, and the doctor took blood and took my heart rate and my blood pressure and, checked my throat, my ears, and my eyes, and, pinged and banged and probed and poked and asked me questions, wanted to know how I was doing, and went through a series of things to give me a checkup. And the doctor says, well, you're healthy. You don't have any chronic problems. You don't have any cancer, a long-term illness that is eating up, or short-term illness, disease that is going to take your life. You are healthy. But there is a difference in me being healthy to carry out my daily duties and being fit for a strenuous activity like full court basketball for an hour, or going rock climbing, or mountain climbing. I'm not fit for any of those. I would have to lose weight, get in shape, get a personal trainer to be able to do those things full bore. You see, there is a difference between being healthy and fit. I'm thinking right now of a long-distance runner, a woman, who could run, the 26 miles in world-class time, world record time, but couldn't carry her own luggage through the airport. I'm thinking of a bicycler who was an international star, and he was healthy and fit, but while he was biking and winning these, they found out that he had cancer, so his body was not healthy even though he was fit to win championships. And so as you go through this, understand, our doctor is going to go through a regimen with us, and you as the leadership team in your church need to go through an inspection, an investigation, a checkup routine to see if your church is healthy spiritually and structurally, but that it is fit and able to carry out the rigorous role of a building program. So whether you're renovating and building new, or just building new, or relocating and taking existing property and renovating them, or building brand new on the property, whatever it is you're doing, even just giving your church a facelift, you better make certain that you're both healthy and fit for the task that you're going to take. And so as you go through this, just as a doctor would run us through test, you want to run your church through test. So let's just talk about what it means for your church to be healthy and fit as we apply it toward a building program. Let's talk about congregational discovery. Have you discovered your core values? Because if you find that you or your leadership team are in misalignment with your congregation, you better have agreement. And so do you know what your actual core values are, the real core values of your church? Do you have competing causes in your church? You better know and have it clearly defined what God's mandate and mission is for your church. What are you supposed to be doing? And you better put guardrails up and deal with any competing mission or mandate where your leaders may have a different understanding of what the mission of the church is, or your congregation does, or a ministry directors in your church. Everybody had better be in alignment and agreement. Here's one I commonly find, and it's the number one reason that Gary McIntosh says that pastors are either fired, released from their duties, or their role and credibility is diminished to the point because of dueling visions. Not just double visions. That's seeing the same thing twice. Dueling visions is where they are trying to conquer each other. They're trying to destroy each other. They're trying to win out. If you've got dueling visions, you better deal with it because it's hard. How are you going to have and design a building if your vision for that building is two different things? And then your code. The very ethos and essence, the personality, who you are at your very core. And inside of your code comes your core values and your culture. It's all wrapped up in the DNA of your church. So when you look at your culture, and that deals with your beliefs, who you are in your character, what your church bees, and then your behavior. And you have things that are acceptable and things that are not acceptable. Things that are essential and things that are non-essentials. Things that are negotiable and things that are non-negotiable. And so as you look at the culture of your church, is it healthy and fit, or do you need to work to change your culture? Then you look at the condition of your congregation. And do you have, let's deal with this. If you look at your congregation, and as I referred earlier to the book, The Other 80%, if 20% or less of your congregation is involved in ministry in your church, in and through your church, that's not healthy. If you have 20 to 35%, that's fair. When you want to get above 35 and 45%, and you're ranging for 65% of your people actively involved ministering in and through your church, you can say that your church it looks healthy and probably is fit. And why I say this is that you need to have plenty of people in your church, inviting them into taking part in your building program. Now, in the series we've done on developing your building committee, we give you a structure to follow to help get people involved and invested in your ministry so they take ownership of it, so they feel like they're a part of what's happening and they buy into the need of it. Your congregational condition, you need to stop and look at what percentage of them have really committed and bought in to your project. You have to estimate this, so this means you have to investigate, which means interview and give attention to the people in your church. Their money, are they giving toward it? Are they talking about it among themselves? And they may hide their thoughts where you can't hear it, and you've got to go investigate and interview them and, do some investigative work to see, is there buy-in? Sometimes I've done listening sessions for churches to sit down and pull in the groups and interview the congregation in small groups to see where they are and to hear their concerns. It's something to consider. You want to know if they buy into your ministry as a whole and to your project. If you're building for the wrong reason and they don't see the reason, or they're internally focused and focused on themselves and their comfort, and they're kind of cloistered and they're isolated and insulated, from their community, and they're really just want to make certain you have a great children's program because they have kids in that age group, and your project's not going to help them feel more comfortable or give proper care to their family, and so they're not interested in it. And so you've got some congregational discovery to do to look at their values, their mandate, God's vision for your ministry, the code, who they are really at their very core, their DNA as a church, the culture, the condition of your people spiritually, their service involvement, and you want to know whether or not they're committed. Now, as we talk about this, let me ask you, are your ministries in your church in alignment? How well are they performing? Are they organized, coordinated, orchestrated together? Are they interrelated? And so as you begin to give some assessment and evaluate your ministry, do you see them in alignment or do you have silos? Tom Rainer wrote a book some years ago, I think it was 2006, on simple church, and he dealt with the silos that develop in a church as it ages and grows, where the ministries have their own mission, their own values, their own strategy, and their own mandate and vision for what's supposed to happen, and they're not all on the same page. To fix that, you need to get everybody in alignment. Then you need to look at how everything is performing. Because if you're going to go, let's say, relocate and build a brand new facility, you want to have all this together and pull these people in so that they can give their part to helping you properly design and build the new facility. Do they work well as a team, or are they competing with each other? And, they're competing for volunteers to help and developing leaders. They're competing in that way. Look at your ministry performance. Then look at whether or not they're productive. And another better word probably would be effectiveness. Is there spiritual transformation taking place? In other words, are you carrying out your mission of making disciples that make more disciples? Is there life change happening? Are you getting the results that you planned or wanted? And so here's the thing about a building project. It's like filleting open a fish, where you can see every bone, every tissue, fat tissue, muscle tissue, nerve system. You see the digestive system. You see everything about that fish inside and out. A building project is like filleting open your congregation, your church, all your programs, your money, your manpower, your ministries, how everything works together. And so you might as well go do your own filleting and looking at everything before you get to me and before you get to the industry professionals who are going to design and build your building. I'm the guy who helps you go through and really carry out an audit of the spiritual health and structure of your congregation and help you determine if you are fit for the project. Now, let's talk about selecting the right people from your congregation and industry professionals. Do you know who you're looking for to put them as a part of your project? Do you have the right purpose? I've worked with churches and interviewed churches who I told, you're not ready to build yet because they didn't have the right people developed and available in their congregation, and they had some internal struggles with who was going to help them professionally carry it out, and they didn't have a right motive for building. And sometimes when it comes to selecting the right property, they were struggling with, where do we want to relocate? And you end up with dueling opinions about where their land ought to be and how much land they ought to get. And there are two parts to getting land. There's the location of the land and the quality of the land and the quantity of the land. And then have you been securing buy-in? Before you ever announce this to the church, have you looked at your people to say, they bought into our ministry and they're going to buy into our project? Have you determined what is mission critical? What is the next thing that perhaps you have land and your facility is built, but you've got to add on new facility Do you know which thing you're going to serve? Have you prioritized your programs, projects, events, and activities to know what you need to build next? And have you been saving money in advance? I'll give you take just a moment to do this, but have you been saving money in advance? One way to do that is to set up a sieve at the end of your each month and giving cycle and put so much percentage of that in your building program. You end up making a building payment to yourself or taking the disposable income that's above your budget each month, and you put it into a building program. So making a payment to yourself, starting maybe with the 25% of what you project as your monthly payment, or taking the reserve money you have at the end of your giving cycle and putting that into the building fund, or doing both of these, or go ahead and put a building fund in your budget, let people give above and beyond the regular giving toward it, and you begin to save money so that you don't have the strain of a capital stewardship campaign and begging people to come up with the money. Start buy-in early, even to the point of leading them to put money aside in advance, and I mean 5 years in advance, and build up. So if you have a 5-year program for saving for your future project, you're starting with 20% of a projected monthly payment and saving that every month for a year. The next year, make it 40%. Third year, you go to 60%, and you go all the way up through this until you are at 100% of that payment, to help your ministry not be under the stressful situation and the pressure of having to come up with all the money in the next 3 years to fund your building projects. Start ahead of that. Now, let me run through a summary here. The first one is your church identity. Do you clearly know who you are and what you're called to do and how you're called to do it, so that everybody's on the same page? Your community intelligence. Do you know who you're trying to reach? Do you know where you're trying to reach them? Do you know how you're trying to reach them? And then your ministry master plan. Usually pastors will know what a site master plan or a campus master plan is. But when I talk to them about a ministry master plan, is how their ministry is designed in all of its systems and processes, its programs, its projects, events, and activities, its personnel, how it is all working together, orchestrated, coordinated, how they're interrelated, and how they are going to coordinate together to carry out God's calling for their church. And so what is your long-term vision for your church and campus? Just everybody on the same page. What are your church model benchmarks? How do you know if it's going to be the right model for the future? Do you need to start redesigning your church design? What model you have? Do you understand your projected growth rate for the new project? Can you afford to build large enough, or are you going to have to start using it multiple times over the weekend? Your projected age cycle of your church and of your congregation as you look to pay off the cost of this building. And so as we go through this and you look at your congregation and your projected life cycle of your church, where are you? And in short, churches usually have in their life cycle of their church 15 to 20 years of growth, 30 to 40 years of plateau, and then 20 to 30 years of decline until the church dies. Now, the good thing about the church over us as humans is that a church can S-hook, and they can create a new, refreshed mission and ask God to give them his new vision for their ministry, and they can start up that incline of growth, 15 to 20-year growth cycle, and then at any point S-curve again and begin through a fresh remodeling, redesigning of their ministry with their mission and vision and strategic plan to begin growing again. And so as the community changes around your church, or as your congregation changes as you grow, that you can go back and look at your growth cycle and you can restart your ministry's growth cycle. So as we look at these things, how healthy are you? Well, I'm Marshall Shannon. I'm a pre-construction navigator and a ministry design coach with these two websites to help you further and lead your ministry to the next level. You can reach me at either one of these phone numbers, and we'll be happy to talk with you. Thank you very much for listening. I trust you'll make good use of the resources that are below. And if you have any questions, you can type them right into the comment and question section below the video screen and hit submit, and they'll shoot them to me, and I'll be able to answer those and send them back to you. Lord bless you.